The veteran sat across from the alien council, his weathered face set in a permanent scowl, his body a testament to years of war. The council members, sleek and adorned with shimmering armor, regarded him with a mix of disdain and curiosity. They had seen his kind before, old soldiers whose best days were behind them, reduced to rambling relics of a bygone era. But this one was different. This one was insistent, nearly desperate, and that had made them listen. At least, for the moment. "I have been to the edge of the galaxy," the veteran began, his voice low and gravelly. "I've seen what you fear, what your kind dreads more than anything. But you will not believe it. None of you will. You will underestimate them, as I did once." He paused, his eyes flickering to each of the council members. "You will regret it." The room fell into a tense silence. The veteran had fought in a war that spanned entire star systems, against species so varied and powerful that the average life form could scarcely comprehend them. His own people had called him a hero. Yet here, in the council chambers of the Galician Confederation, his words were met with skepticism. These beings, the so-called superior races of the galaxy, had always prided themselves on their intellect and advanced technology. Humans, as far as they were concerned, were nothing but a minor nuisance in the grand scheme of things, primitive, emotional, and lacking the sophistication that defined their own kind. "Humanity is nothing," one of the council members, an alien with an elongated neck and sharp, angular features, scoffed. "A scattered species of bipedal creatures clinging to their primitive homeworld. How could they possibly pose a threat to us?" The veteran's fingers drummed against the table, a reflex of his frustration. "You think they're insignificant because they don't have your technology. You think they're weak because they don't have your long lifespans or your so-called intelligence. But let me tell you this. You're wrong." He leaned forward, locking eyes with the council member who had spoken. "They don't fight like we do. They don't think like we do. They will surprise you in ways you cannot imagine." The room shifted slightly, the alien leaders exchanging glances. They had faced countless races throughout the galaxy, most of them proud, honorable in their own right, but ultimately predictable. They were calculable, understood. Humanity, however, was still a mystery. A species that had barely reached space exploration, let alone intergalactic warfare, yet had already managed to upset the delicate balance in their local systems. The veteran saw the doubt in their eyes. He knew that no matter how hard he tried, no matter how many battles he recounted, they would not listen until it was too late. And when the inevitable came, he would not be there to save them. He would be too old, too broken. He had seen the horrors of that war firsthand, and he had seen humanity's greatest asset. "You will regret this," he repeated, his voice more resolute now. "I have seen what they are capable of. I fought beside them, and I fought against them. You will find no greater enemy in the galaxy. They will break you down in ways you cannot anticipate. You think they lack honor, that they are merely savages. But they fight for something far more dangerous. They fight for each other. They fight because they refuse to lose, no matter the cost. That's something your kind doesn't understand. And it's what will be your undoing." Another council member, a tall, reptilian figure with glowing eyes, leaned back in its chair, clearly unimpressed. "So, you say humans are a threat because they are stubborn? Because they refuse to yield? You paint them as if they were gods, but they are nothing but another fleeting species. We have seen countless races like them rise and fall. What makes you think they are any different?" The veteran's eyes narrowed. "It's not just about stubbornness. It's about ingenuity. The human mind is like no other in the galaxy. You think their technology is primitive, but they can take the simplest things and turn them into weapons. They can improvise in ways you can't begin to imagine. I've seen them tear apart the most advanced warships with nothing but their hands and their wits. I've seen them turn the tide of battle using strategies that make no sense, but somehow they always work." The council members were unmoved, their confidence unshaken by the veteran's warnings. They had seen their fair share of arrogant soldiers who believed they understood the depths of the galaxy. They had no time for warnings based on emotional, unquantifiable experiences. They had their own vast empire to maintain, and they would not be distracted by the rantings of a lone veteran. The veteran leaned back in his chair, his fists clenched in frustration. He had expected this reaction, but it didn't make it any easier. He had spent years trying to convince himself that the galaxy's arrogance was unwarranted, that the human race could be left to develop at its own pace, without interference. But now, looking into the faces of these aliens, he knew it wasn't just humanity's future at stake. The galaxy was about to make a grave mistake, one that could cost them all. He stood up, his joints creaking as he straightened. "I'm done talking," he said, his voice bitter. "But mark my words, you will regret this. You will remember my warning, and you will wish you had listened. And when the time comes, don't say I didn't warn you." With that, he turned on his heel and left the room, his words hanging in the air like a death sentence. The council watched him go, still unconvinced, still dismissive. But deep down, they knew something was different about this particular veteran. They just didn't know how right he was yet. The veteran had seen the future, a future where humanity would rise and defy expectations. And the aliens? They were about to learn the hard way that humanity was not to be underestimated. The countdown had begun. The war had begun. The aliens, confident in their superiority, launched their first strike against Earth with a vast armada. Massive warships filled the skies, their weapons primed and ready to reduce entire cities to rubble. It was supposed to be an easy victory, a simple conquest. The humans, with their primitive technology and scattered defenses, were no match for the sheer might of the Galician forces. But what the invaders didn't account for was something far more dangerous: humanity's refusal to break. The first wave of the attack seemed unstoppable. The alien ships dropped into Earth's atmosphere, unleashing bombardments on every major city. They targeted military bases, power grids, transportation hubs, anything that could potentially resist them. The humans fought back with whatever they had, but they were vastly outmatched. It seemed inevitable that the planet would fall. But then something unexpected happened. Humanity did not collapse. The cities burned, and the skies were filled with the smoke of war, yet the humans held firm. Rather than fleeing or panicking, they organized. Small resistance groups, once isolated, now communicated in ways that no one had anticipated. They began using the terrain to their advantage, using guerrilla tactics and improvised weapons to attack the invaders. The aliens had expected a quick surrender, an easy victory. Instead, the humans showed them a fight they were not prepared for. The alien ships, powerful as they were vulnerable in ways the invaders hadn't considered. The human forces struck at the weak points: underground supply lines, energy conduits, vulnerable ports. They didn't need advanced technology to exploit the gaps in the aliens' superiority. They simply needed to think differently, to see what their enemies could not. The veteran had been right. The human spirit, their ingenuity, was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Where the aliens relied on vast fleets and technology, the humans relied on resourcefulness. The veteran had warned them, but the aliens had laughed it off. Now, as their ships began to fall one by one, they were starting to understand the cost of their arrogance. One alien commander, frustrated by the growing resistance, ordered a bombing raid that would obliterate an entire city. The human forces had prepared for this, though, setting traps in the rubble of their fallen cities. The raid was a disaster for the invaders. The bombers were ambushed by a small group of human fighters who had rigged the ruins with explosives and automated defenses. The advanced alien ships, with all their firepower, were no match for the ingenuity of a few determined humans. In space, human forces began to adapt as well. Though their ships were far inferior to the Galaxians' technologically advanced vessels, humans made up for it in tactics. They would lure the alien ships into traps, exploiting the aliens' rigid strategies and unpreparedness for human unpredictability. The alien ships, built for open combat, were ill-suited for the narrow, evasive maneuvers required when battling humans. The human ships had smaller profiles and could dart in and out of the chaos, delivering sudden, devastating strikes. The veterans' warning echoed in the minds of the alien leaders as the first wave of the invasion faltered. They had been too confident, too dismissive of humanity's potential. Their advanced technology, while impressive, couldn't adapt fast enough to counter the unpredictability and sheer determination of the humans. It was not the human weapons or their ships that made the difference. It was the way they fought, the way they thought. The aliens couldn't predict them, couldn't understand the raw willpower driving their every move. The veteran had been right. The humans were a force not to be underestimated. The alien forces scrambled to adjust, trying to gain the upper hand, but it was clear that the initial confidence they had felt was now replaced by doubt. The more they tried to crush humanity, the more they found themselves facing something they hadn't expected: resilience. It wasn't just about winning battles, it was about survival. And humanity was far better at surviving than they had ever anticipated. The alien leadership began to question everything. How could a species with so little technological advancement still pose such a threat? How could humans, with their scattered cities and limited resources, turn the tide of battle with such unexpected tactics? The veterans' words rang in their ears now. Humans didn't need superiority in technology or numbers to win. They only needed to refuse to lose. And the aliens were beginning to understand that the greatest threat wasn't just the weapons humans wielded, but the very essence of who they were. The tide had begun to turn. What was supposed to be a quick conquest had devolved into a drawn-out conflict, one that the alien forces were no longer certain they could win. The human resistance, once seen as a minor nuisance, had grown into something far more dangerous. Their tactics, crude but effective, were starting to take a toll on the Galician forces. What they didn't understand, what they still refused to understand, was that humanity fought not for glory or honor, but for survival. They had nothing to lose. And that made them the most dangerous adversaries in the galaxy. The alien commanders convened to discuss their next move. What had once been an assured victory was now slipping further from their grasp. The humans had adapted to every tactic the invaders had thrown at them. They had taken their weapons, repurposed their technology, and made it work against them. The humans had learned to hack into their communication systems to disrupt their warships from within. What had started as an overwhelming display of alien superiority was now a series of humiliating defeats. The veterans' words echoed through the minds of the alien leaders as they sat in their war rooms, analyzing the growing list of failures. They were no longer sure they understood their enemies. The humans didn't fight like anyone else they had ever encountered. They didn't play by the same rules. Where other species relied on their technology and strength, humans relied on something far more unpredictable: their will to survive. In one particular battle, the human forces managed to destroy an entire alien fleet by luring it into a trap. The alien ships, vastly superior in firepower and armor, had been enticed into a narrow asteroid field where the humans had set up hidden weapons and obstacles. The alien commanders, confident in their ability to defeat anything in their path, had been blindsided. The humans knew the terrain better, knew how to use it to their advantage. They didn't need superior technology. They simply needed to think outside the box. The alien leadership's confidence had eroded with each passing day. They had underestimated the humans from the start, thinking their superiority in technology and tactics would ensure victory. But it hadn't. The human forces fought with an intensity that the aliens had never anticipated. They were relentless, refusing to give up, even when faced with overwhelming odds. And that, more than anything, was what set them apart. As the conflict dragged on, the human forces began to gain the upper hand. The aliens, now playing catch-up, couldn't keep up with the pace of the humans' adaptability. Every time they thought they had a solution, the humans had already found a counter. Their strategies were fluid, ever-changing. There was no pattern to follow, no weakness to exploit. The alien forces had never encountered anything like it before. The veteran had warned them. He had told them that the human spirit was unlike anything they had ever faced. And now, the alien leaders were beginning to understand. It wasn't just about brute force or advanced technology. It was about how humans could always find a way to keep fighting, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. They had a resilience that no other species possessed, a refusal to accept defeat. But the aliens were too proud to admit they had been wrong. Instead of pulling back, Instead of rethinking their approach, they doubled down. They increased their attacks, launched even more devastating offensives, hoping to break the humans' resolve. But every time they struck, the humans struck back harder. The alien commanders found themselves increasingly desperate, scrambling for answers that didn't seem to exist. The human resistance only grew stronger with every setback, every battle. It was in these moments, as the aliens were pushed further and further into retreat, that the veteran's prophecy began to come true. The aliens' arrogance had blinded them. They had dismissed the human threat as a joke, a small nuisance in the grand scheme of things. Now, they were paying the price for that mistake. The veteran had seen it coming. He had warned them, but they hadn't listened. And now, the cost of their ignorance was becoming painfully clear. As the days turned into weeks and then months, the alien forces found themselves losing ground. Their superior numbers and technology couldn't compensate for the one thing they had underestimated: humanity's will to fight. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about a species refusing to be subjugated, refusing to be erased from the galaxy. The humans fought not just for their survival, but for their freedom, for their future. And that made all the difference. The veteran, watching from the sidelines, knew it was only a matter of time before the inevitable happened. The aliens would either retreat entirely or face complete annihilation. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price for it. But the real tragedy was that it didn't have to be this way. They could have avoided this conflict, could have listened to the warnings and found a way to coexist. But their arrogance had blinded them, and now they would regret it. And the veteran, once again, was proven right. The galaxy would never forget the lesson humanity had taught the alien invaders. A species driven by survival, by an unbreakable will, could never be defeated by sheer force alone. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and that was a mistake they would carry with them forever. The final stage of the war had arrived, and it was clear the Galician forces were losing ground. What was once an invasion of unimaginable scale had now turned into a desperate retreat. The aliens, who had initially believed their conquest of Earth would be swift and simple, were now scrambling to salvage what they could. The humans, though vastly outgunned and outnumbered, had turned the tide through sheer determination and strategy. What had seemed like an inevitable defeat had become an unthinkable victory. The alien ships, once majestic and imposing, now looked like wounded animals fleeing from a predator. The humans had adapted, each battle adding to their knowledge, each loss fueling their resolve. It wasn't the advanced technology that tipped the scales. It was the humans' will to fight, their ability to rise from the ashes and adapt in ways the invaders couldn't understand. They fought with an ingenuity that surpassed the Galaxians' expectations. The alien commanders, now on the defensive, found themselves up against a species that could not be predicted, a species that refused to surrender. The veteran had been right all along. He had warned the Council, had told them that humanity was not to be underestimated. But they had dismissed him, thinking him just another battle-worn soldier with little more than sentimental, outdated wisdom. Now, as their forces dwindled and their retreat was all but inevitable, the alien leaders could only stare in disbelief at the strength of the human resistance. With every passing day, the humans pressed their advantage. They were relentless, striking at the heart of the Galician forces wherever they found weakness. Their guerrilla tactics were not just effective, they were demoralizing. The aliens, so accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer firepower, had never encountered a foe so determined, so adaptable. Humans had learned the ways of war quickly, taking the alien technology they captured and turning it against its creators. It wasn't just their weapons that made them dangerous. It was their minds. The Galaxians could not predict their strategies, their next moves. Every victory led to an even more impressive attack, and the alien fleet found itself unable to regroup in the face of such tenacity. The veteran had always known the heart of humanity's strength was not in their weapons or technology, but in their spirit. The human will to survive, to protect their families, their homes, had never been stronger. The Galaxians could not break that spirit, no matter how powerful their weapons were. And now, in the face of this overwhelming will, they were beginning to crumble. Even as the alien forces began to retreat, the humans pressed on. The veteran, now watching from the sidelines, knew that the fight wasn't truly over. There would be other forces in the galaxy, other empires that would look at Earth and see a threat to their dominance. The humans would have to be ready, but for now, the victory was theirs. The invaders were leaving, their once proud fleet reduced to a mere shadow of its former self. They had underestimated humanity, and they were paying the price for it. The humans had taken the first steps toward ensuring their place in the galaxy, showing that they would not simply be passive participants in the universe. They had proved that they could stand up to the greatest forces the galaxy had to offer, and they had emerged victorious. But the true cost of that victory was something the veteran understood all too well. The human race had been forged in the crucible of war, and though they had won, the scars would remain. But they had proven something more important than their military might. They had proven that humanity was capable of achieving the impossible, of rising from the depths of despair to strike down the invaders who had thought themselves invincible. As the alien ships retreated into the stars, the humans began to rebuild, to reclaim their world. The war had taken its toll, but humanity's resilience had proven stronger than anyone could have predicted. The Galaxians would never forget the lesson they had learned. Underestimate humanity, and you would pay the price. The humans had shown them that the most dangerous weapon in the universe was not a ship or a laser, but the unyielding will of a species determined to survive. And so, the war ended. The humans had driven the invaders from their home, and their place in the galaxy was no longer uncertain. The veteran, watching as humanity's victory unfolded, knew that the galaxy had been forever changed. The invaders had left, but humanity was no longer a minor player on the galactic stage. They had proven themselves, and no one would forget it. The galaxy had learned its lesson the hard way. Humanity would never again be seen as weak. The price of underestimating them had been paid, and it was a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come.